we changed vehicles after our hawker business failed, right? The key thing why we were still able to be financially free by 2020 was we kept going. You know, when you run a race or you're in a competition, the first thing you need to do is to keep going, right? So that you then allow yourself the chance to succeed.
Welcome back to Chills with TFC. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and today I travel all the way to Penang, right? So right after budget coverage, I came all the way out. Of course, I want to take a break, but at the same time, I'm very excited to meet the breakout couple. So, would you guys want to introduce yourself for everybody that somehow don't know you?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm John. She's Fran. We are known as the corporate breakout couple. Maybe I'll start with my own background.
Yes.
So I'm a true blue Singaporean. I live and studied and worked in Singapore all my life. Before we got onto the journey of being together and being financially free and all that, maybe you just share a little bit of background. So I studied in a Singapore university, and then of course before that I served my national service. After which I got to the corporate world, right? So before we embarked on our journey, we actually were corporate rats, and oh God, I don't know how long.
Corporate rats, you just offended a lot of people.
but we use it quite often in our videos.
Yeah, we use it quite often because, that's the truth, right? We are in the rat race, and we are working in a system where, there's something routine about it. It's a design system. So, it's actually a quite a known term.
So basically, just to cut John a little bit here, John is actually the Singapore poster boy, right?
Yeah.
So
I know it's a repeated trope in your YouTube videos. Right?
Because
poster boy.
So he graduated with a great degree, then got together with his ex-wife, got married, just pretty much what the government wants.
Yeah, so I guess for me, in terms of my background, everything was so smooth sailing until I actually experienced my first real setback in my life, which was my separation and divorce. Because before that, everything was good. I got my first house at the age of 25, then I got my car at 28. What's next for us then with my ex-wife was probably to have kids, which, at that point in time, we didn't. So life was smooth sailing, right? Just like the Singapore dream, we'd probably retire at 65, have our lifestyle inflation, driving our BMs and upgrading to a bigger condo, just like, how any normal Singaporean would be, right? So when I had my first setback in my early 30s, I guess that really got me thinking about, is there more to life than just following the usual routine of the corporate rat race? At that point in time, I probably worked about 7-8 years. I started to think about the stuff that would actually really matter. So one of the major shifts was I really started working on my health, and then I start to think beyond what could life be like.
Actually, was your health getting really bad?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Okay. Because 7 to 8 years in the corporate grind, you start to see a lot of people's health getting quite jalad.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Why don't you describe how you look like before?
Okay, it wasn't that bad, but I was probably a lot more fatter and unfit because I didn't exercise much.
I love how wife just jolted you. How about you tell people how you look like before?
Just now you look awesome, man.
Thank you very much. That's a huge compliment from my wife.
Yeah, awesome. And how do you all meet? How do you get together?
Okay, I will maybe. So my name's Fran. So I'm a Malaysian, born and bred in Penang, and I studied my degree twinning with a UK university. Then I started work in Dell. So I was in Dell for about 7 years, and all my life for me, money in a way came easy for me. Not that I came from a rich family, far from that, right? But I had a lot of relatives and my parents dote on me, right? So my first real setback actually was my father died when I was 11 years old from cancer. So that's how I became a bit more street smart because I had to rely on myself. My sister was very young, only 4, so my mother paid more attention to her, of course, which, no resentment there.
No resentment.
No, really, no resentment because I'm very independent one.
Okay, steady.
Steady. So, of course, to make ends meet and whatnot, my mother took on jobs and whatnot, right? So I became very independent. And when I first started my job, right, in Dell, my first paycheck after minusing all the taxes, the EPF and so it was 6,500 ringgit at the age of before turning 24.
That is very high. Yeah.
Crazy,
Even
right?
Even today, a mid-career individual in Malaysia, maybe they will be about
exactly,
there.
and that was my first paycheck from Dell. So, of course, I went a little bit bonkers lah, right? So my colleagues and I, when we go shopping, we don't really see the price tag. And back then, Dell was doing really well. So they were literally throwing money at us. They were doing promotions. Okay, if you sell this, I give you this. If you sell that. So it's just our basic salary plus our commission plus on top of other promotions, right? It just became amazing. So of course, now what happened? How did I land up in Singapore? So that's very interesting, right? I got into debt because crazy spending, financial acumen very low, don't know anything about finances.
Income
only
very
know,
high, but
only
spend,
know
spend,
how to
spend.
spend only,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So I changed roles from individual contributor. I became a manager, right? Like a sales coach. So now my commission is based on my team's performance, right? So of course not up to me anymore. It's up to the team. So my salary did take a hit, but my spending did not stop. That was the trap. Right, so I got myself into a debt, and I'm going, how to repay back so much money? I think it was in the tune of 30, 40K, and then I started my bikini business as well.
Bikini. Sounds like a
Don't
Penang
worry,
thing.
I wasn't the model, okay?
No, hey, I wasn't going there. But it sounds like only a Penang person would think of a bikini
Yes.
business.
So I was already getting jaded with the corporate rat race, right? I mean, yes, the money was great, but wow, you're literally exchanging time for money. So my ex-colleague and I said, okay lah, why don't we travel to Brazil, go and import some hot bikinis and sell to Malaysians? Great idea, right? Because Malaysians are a little bit more, they're more conservative.
No, till date, you go to the swimwear shop in Malaysia, it sounds very boring.
Yes, super boring. So, the bikinis that I imported in basically covered your top part only.
Brazilian style.
And then there's a little V here. So the Malaysians went, wow, they just bought out everything.
Really?
So it was a great business.
Oh,
We
wow.
made money.
Wow.
But then I asked myself, is this bikini business really what I want to do? So anyway, long story short, I got myself into debt, blah, blah, blah. Then, so I said, Singapore exchange rate at that time was very good. 2.34.
Oh my god, you were from the 2.34 era. Okay.
So when I calculate, wow, 2.34. Of course, everyone knows how much the exchange rate is now, right? 3.57. So back then, 2.34. Wow, can earn a lot of money. So that's how I went. And so I got approached by a headhunting firm. I became a headhunter. And that was how I headhunted John.
Yeah. So I was actually in the corporate space in the IT industry doing sales, predominantly sales and business development. And that's how she hunted me.
Nice.
I was actually joining MNC then. I guess for us, the long story short about sharing about our corporate career is after many years, in 10 over years, we really got very jaded. The difference between her and me is I was
You
so
didn't start
afraid.
a bikini business.
No, I didn't start a beginning business.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't start any business, unfortunately, even though I had so many business ideas in my head. And that was the unfortunate thing about staying in a job that, I know I'm just here for the money, it's routine. But how could I stay in this for the next, another 30 years? That was crazy. That really got me thinking. So that's how we actually embark on our early retirement journey. We then built a plan to be early retired and financially independent. When did we start the plan? Around the age of 36?
2016.
2016, yeah.
We started asking ourselves, right? So if we don't want to work for the rest of our lives for somebody, then obviously the only logical thing would be to start a business. Then the question is, what kind of business? So, I'm from Penang. I love food. And when I took John back to Penang, right, when we first started dating, he loved the Penang food. So we said, hey, there is a serious lack of good Penang authentic food in Singapore.
That's right.
So my vision was to bring fantastic authentic food to Singaporeans as well as to the Malaysians working in Singapore.
Oh yeah. That is a big group. Millions Malaysians.
Because every time I miss my Penang food, I go to Singapore. For example, it says Penang char kway teow, but the chef is from China.
Yeah.
Cannot one. They put
Not
lime
nice.
on my char kway teow.
That's pad thai.
We did that. Yeah, exactly. Right, missing only the peanut.
Yeah.
So we did that, and so it took us 2 years to do the R&D, the research,
The planning.
to coming up with the recipes.
2 years for char kway teow
Yeah.
store.
No, we didn't do char kway teow. We
No.
did Penang nasi lemak with fried chicken, rendang. We also did rojak, Penang rojak, the fruits one, and then my awesome Indian mee goreng.
That is
and
a
also
very
chee chong
big
fan.
quantity of different things.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
and in
quite
order
crazy.
to make it authentic, right, we were crazy enough to actually import many
The
of the
ingredients.
ingredients all the way from Penang.
You're really siao, really
Yeah,
siao.
because that's the thing, you cannot get authentic Penang food in Singapore if you don't have the original ingredients.
But that's
so
the F&B problem in Singapore, right?
Correct.
Because
Yeah,
a lot of supply chain are
unfortunately.
controlled, right? So there are only a few major importers, and then all of them control the same thing. That's why you go all the pastry shop, all taste the same because they all use the same thing, what?
Chicken rice chili,
now
all
that you
taste the
mention,
same
yes,
also.
the chicken rice chili. You know, when you eat your roasted meat, right? The darker chili, it is also, if you notice, the taste is quite similar.
Same one.
All
Yeah.
The green
packaged
chili
from the
oh,
factories.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
exactly.
yes.
So of course, unfortunately, that business failed. And a lot of people ask us, "Oh, Fran, John, you must be really sad when the business failed." Actually, we weren't, because when we went into the business, right? So this is the financial acumen part, and also the vision setting. We already knew that we didn't quit our high-paying corporate jobs to become hawkers, to earn that money. Our vision was to create a conglomerate, a food conglomerate of our brand was called Penang Chia Ho Liao, right? And we wanted to create a conglomerate of that. And that was one of the vehicles that could have gotten us financially free if it had worked, right? Maybe we're at 10 outlets in Singapore, and each outlet was giving us passive income of 5,000. That's 50K already,
And then we have a
right?
centralized kitchen.
Correct.
I
But
get it.
unfortunately, that one hawker store also cannot make it because of rental and manpower. Then what are the chances of me putting in another, let's say, $1 million to open 10 outlets? That's insane, right? So when we decided to wrap it up, we were okay because we knew that was just a vehicle that didn't work, right? So let's find another vehicle that works, right? So a lot of people ask me, is it because of the hard work that you quit? And my standard answer is, please, if it's a hard work that made us quit, we have quit on day 2.
Yeah, it was horrible.
It was,
the
it
first,
was grueling.
the first month, both of us
Slept
the
2-3
2
hours.
to 3 hours
max.
because we were literally still at the hawker stall at 12 midnight, and I was stirring the bit pot out of
Chili.
sambal, the chili, right? And because we could only do that after hours, right?
Yeah,
After the closing
yeah,
hours and
yeah.
all that, and then we were not very efficient. We were still starting out.
Because we were
Yeah.
brand new in the F&B scene, you
Yeah,
see. We
yeah,
were not,
yeah,
we didn't come from a generation of hawkers who
No, I
taught us
just
everything.
just your menu line, I can already envision the complexity of it
Yes.
already, right?
Everything had its own ingredient. It
Yeah.
cannot.
The process,
cross.
yeah. You must copy the dim sum shop. Everything is just campur only. Here, this
Correct.
one become
But
that
then,
one. That's not,
That's the reason why, right? Guys, if you go to Penang and you eat, like, for example, you go to the stalls in Penang, each stall only specializes in one item,
Yeah.
right? But unlike Singapore, they sell everything. Like Chai Kueh also sell with Chi Chong Fan, sell with economy bihun, right? And the reason why we needed to sell so many items in Singapore is because we cannot cover costs if we only sell one item. Not enough. Right, but in Penang you can, because rental in Penang is super low. You are your own manpower, right? Rental is super low. We were paying 3,000 Sing for rental in Singapore,
oh my god.
for a tiny hawker stall.
Where were you?
We were at Chinatown at first. The rental was,
Chinatown
I
is
think,
一级战场 leh. You know, it's competitive, man.
It's
Chinatown
very
is no
competitive.
joke,
It's the
yeah.
largest, the
Yeah.
Chinatown complex.
Yes, the
hawker
level
center is the
2 there,
largest
right?
in Singapore, actually.
Yeah,
So
it's
the rental there was
crazy.
2,650, if I remember. And then the thing is about Chinatown is that unfortunately there's a lot of low income customers there as well.
Barriers to entry, right, for new hawker nowadays is so difficult
Yes,
because even if you are your own manpower, the rental alone is so high,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Based on if you are in an NEA hawker center, then it's based on a bidding system, or if you're a private coffee shop,
Even
it starts
worse.
at 5,000-6,000, and if
Even
you are in a
worse.
shopping mall, it's even worse. It starts
Crazy.
with 5 figures.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's very difficult for somebody who has passion for cooking to come in and then it's like, oh, I just want to cook, I want to serve people, but you really need to be a business person first
Yeah.
to work out your numbers. You have the financial runway to cover your starting cost. How long can you last?
Yeah.
Apart from the hard work, sometimes the nasty customers or customers that don't really appreciate you, or impatient customers,
Yeah.
right? Let's say during lunch hour, you're under a lot of stress and pressure, right? To deliver, it's like, I need to sell like 50 or 100 plates of char kway teow within a compressed time period, because that is the period where most people will come, and people don't like to queue because they also don't have enough time.
Fair.
So they
fair,
leave.
fair.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are the challenges of
It's a hard business.
F&B, actually, not just hawkers in Singapore.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is. But you were pointing it out just now about, like, you guys eventually, although that is a first failed attempt, right? Eventually you still managed to, move into a new way of life, and I think you were saying about financial independence, right? So this whole FIRE thing is a thing, right? Like, but when my producer reached out to you say you're not really FIRE, right? So just want to get a little bit of idea, like, so what are you doing then? Like, after leaving Singapore, like, if you're not FIRE, what are you?
Okay, so what Fran shared earlier, right? We changed vehicles after our hawker business failed, right? The key thing why we were still able to be financially free by 2020 was we kept going. You know, when you run a race or you're in a competition, the first thing you need to do is to keep going, right? So that you then allow yourself the chance to succeed. So in 2020 was quite a transformative year for us. Well, after the hawker store, we both went back corporate for a while.
How did that feel? If you failed a venture,
Yep.
and then you go back to the place that you wanted to leave, you know what I mean? How did that feel?
Well, it's about priorities. Before we started the hawker store, I was sharing with you earlier that I've never started a business and all that. So the corporate job became my huge comfort zone. I know that it's very easy for me to just jump around and get a job.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you actually never feel any like defeat or anything. It's like, yeah, just go back. This is a walk in the park. Very easy for me.
not at
Actually, it
all,
was
not at
very
all.
different.
Ah.
I felt it too, you know.
Yeah.
Before I quit my job to become a hawker, I was just I was very passionate in the job, but at the same time, I only know I am doing it for the money, right? If a better offer come my way, I might jump ship.
Many people are like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is fine. Just saying.
You know, I mean, we're all human. We're all after our own rice bowl.
Yes.
But after we closed down the hawker stall, I suddenly had a new purpose because our angle didn't change.
That's
Our
right.
angle is still to be financially free. So now I've got even more fire, and guess what? I now have even more time to work on that goal because our hawker stall was taking up our time almost 24/7. So 6 days a week at the stall, 12 to 14 days in
14 hours.
12 to 14 hours in the stall. We have only one off day, and that off day wasn't like, you know, I can watch Netflix. It was running errands, going to the bank in money, buying more supplies.
I know.
So it was a
Time before a
7
hawker store, you didn't know counting cash is such a big problem, right? The tongkia.
Exactly. It's really
Counting cash
literally
and then
the
making sure that-
coins,
Yes,
the
yes.
dollar
Yeah.
notes,
Damn
and then going to the
stress.
bank. It takes
Yeah,
a while
yeah.
to sort that out, right?
Yes,
and then
yes.
bank it in, and then make sure the accounting is right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So after we closed the store and we went back to work, we're like, wow, I'm very free. You know, my
Yes.
weekends are mine. My weekends are mine, right? And then now what do I do now with my free time? The easy answer would be to watch Netflix or hang out with my friends. No, we actually sign up for many courses to upskill ourselves because don't forget, our angle is still there. And we just wanted to, now that we've got the time, and now we got money as well, right? Because of our jobs. Then we invest back into ourselves. That is the key thing. And also, just a highlight to you, Reggie, in 2012, I did a self-awareness development program training, right? For about, the whole program lasted about 4.5 months. That actually got me woke. You know, in terms of the awareness, what I want, what I don't want. And John joined the program in 2016. And I think together, ever since he joined the program, together as a couple, we became a lot stronger, more united in the terms of the same vision, what we want, what we don't want as a couple and for our lives. I think that is very important.
Yep. So back to your question, right, on FIRE, right? So let me explain the difference between us, because we are also financially independent and we also have retired early, but we are not FIRE because there's a few fundamental concepts that we do not follow. So maybe let me just explain from FIRE first, right? So FIRE, Financial Independent Retire Early, is a movement that was created in 1992, I think, right? Your Money or Your Life, the author, you know, they started this concept where, okay, if you have, let's say your expenses that you need per month is, or let's say per year, it's 100,000 for example. So you will need 25 times of that to be your retirement number. So you need 2.5 million, right, to save you the trouble for math. So what happens is you have 2.5 million and you invest it in a passive fund, let's say in an ETF, right? Let's say S&P index fund, right? Is usually returning you around 7-8% per year, right? What you do is you draw down 4% every year, and then the 3 to 4% covers inflation. So that is the rough formula of how FIRE works, right? And then the next thing is, for FIRE, you need to have a fully paid property, right? So that you don't want to have debt. That's the other element of FIRE that we are also fundamentally different, which we'll explain later. And of course, one of the key thing about FIRE is it's kind of like an end state. When you get to a FIRE, let's say you get to FIRE by 40, right? So you are financially free, you are retired early. There isn't really much for you to do with regards to your money, other than, you know, spending a little time to manage your portfolio, which is rather passive in nature. And the key thing is you need to live off that fixed amount. That rather fixed amount, let's say 100,000 a year, right? And you can't really deviate too much from there because you are drawing down 4%. 4% goes to inflation, right? So the difference between us is it's kind of like, oh, you made it, you stop there. Then you will just do whatever that you want to do based on that 100,000 a year. Now, we are very fundamentally different in that way because we are actually after the cash flow game, right? So the cash flow game, how it works is, in short, your money passively coming in is more, your income is more than your expenses, you're net positive, technically you're financially free. That is the easy formula, right? But of course, the key thing is it doesn't stop there. When you have money coming in, you're actively investing in assets that can either give you capital appreciation or can give you income, a positive, a passive income, a positive cash flow in these two ways. And that number should always be increasing. Okay, this method is not new actually. It's basically from the Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? From Robert Kiyosaki. The cash flow, if you understand the whole cash flow game, right? When they first started being financially free, Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, Robert was actually at 47 years old. They had an income coming at 10,000 US dollars from a monthly income of 10,000 US dollars from their properties. But the key thing to note here is they only chose to spend 3,000 US dollars. Why is that? Why can't they spend 7, 8, 9,000, and then maybe save the 1,000? Because they first understand that, hey, they are after a bigger game. They understand the magic of compounding. And these guys are huge real estate guys. We are actually quite big on real estate as well. So they know that the 7,000 out of the 10,000 goes back reinvested into assets that can then produce you even more income. And what you do is you spend the cash flow within that monthly amount that comes in. So what you want to do in the cash flow game is to keep increasing that number, isn't it? So there's no end state. So in order to achieve this formula of cash flow, where you keep increasing your income, what do you need to do then as somebody who's financially free? You need to stay in the game. You need to be actively involved, which, by the way, doesn't take up too much time. Like maybe 2-3 hours a week, that's all you need. Right?
What do you do in that 2-3 hours? Maybe just give us some color.
Okay, so it really depends on the asset that you're in.
Okay, so let's say we do property, because I know
Okay,
I watch your
property,
videos, and by the way, they have a lot of videos. You can go and check out all their stuff. We're not going to cover everything here, right?
Yep.
Let's just talk about property since you're on it, right?
Sure.
So what is your property portfolio looking like? How do you manage it based on this 2-3 hour thing that you were talking about? Like, what do you all really do as part of it?
Actually,
not 包租婆, 包租公. It's like, hello, pay out your rent, right? Like, what do you really do?
you know the amazing thing about real estate, right? For that matter, right? You don't even need to spend 2-3 hours a week. Because once you handle the first you buy a property, right? And then you get it done up, right? You get it furnished, and then you rent it out with a great real estate agent who can help you with that to get the best price. Once you lock in your rental, right, there's essentially nothing for you to do. So the time concentrated for real estate is actually in the research work, is in understanding the property market. And in order to understand the property market, you actually need to understand the economic cycle. You need to understand the stock market to a certain degree in order to understand the stock property market, because it usually lags. Right? And real estate has a different kind of downturn, upturn kind of cycle than the stock market. So in the dynamics of everything, it's important to understand that. So the 2-3 hours I was referring earlier, actually is not, I wasn't referring to
It's not
real
even the
estate.
retail.
Actually, it's more on the paper
real
asset
estate.
side.
Wow, okay.
Let's say, so for me, I started my roots in Forex, trading Forex in 2016. Well, and I actually lost a lot of money then because I didn't understand positional size. I didn't understand risk management. But what I did fantastically well was every moment I had, I was sitting there watching CNBC, watching Bloomberg, and then always look at the trading desk, looking at the markets every day. So that was the hard part, right? The period of learning, the period of absorbing all these things that didn't make sense to me. Why is inflation? Why is interest rates? Why gold and US dollars have this relationship? So after I started to understand all of that, right, then as Fran was sharing, right, we kept learning, we kept investing in ourselves. So we both went to learn options. Right? And options is a great tool to use with stocks. So if you look at it, right, all these paper assets that I talk about, right, let's say you are in a blue chip stock, or let's say you are in an index funds now, there isn't that much time needed for you to keep up with looking at the prices and all that. I mean, today market, you open up, then okay, Dow is down by how much, Nasdaq is up by how much, okay, look at the China market, look at Hang Seng, there isn't much to do once you do the initial hard work of understanding the instrument and you are vested in the game. So there is a process. So the 2-3 hours, what I'm saying is after you have gone through your ups and downs, lost some money here and then learn your lessons. Now, okay, this is how I'm going to position size. This is how I'm going to enter the market. There isn't really much for you to actually do. It's more to continue learning and understand where like the market is going, so that I may not want to allocate so much money into paper assets right now. Like 2022 was a horrible year, right? It came down a lot, right? Whereas 2020 and 2021 was great for the stock market. It was a huge bull run. So how do you then spread your assets, right? Your asset allocation. How do you then manage and diversify into the different asset classes that reacts differently in terms of a different economic environment?
Okay. So based on that, right, that is a beast. That one is a whole season of discussion, right?
Yeah.
So that's a beast, right? But I just want to maybe share with our audience, right? So for you at this point in time, how are you looking at the markets? Like this time segment, yeah? What are you looking at? What is interesting to you? What are your, yeah.
Okay, so
This is not advice, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's just like, since we are on this topic, right? I would love to just kind of see
Sure.
what are you thinking at,
so for us, we retired in 2020 and now it's 2024, right? So also because we are in retirement status, right? Let's call it retirement status.
Very kinsan, right? Every day jalan everywhere, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, not entirely. There is a very key difference between our risk appetite. There's a key difference in how we invest, because don't forget, we don't have an active job, we don't have an active income coming in. So the dynamics of that in 2020, where we're still holding a job, we have 8 sources of income, is very different from now. So right now, our portfolio is really a lot more passive. I stopped doing forex for a while because it's very time consuming, right? We still do longer term options like monthly or even bi-monthly, like 2 months expiry. We sell cash secured puts, right? So that's about what we do now. It's very passive, right? We go for great stocks. We go for index funds that's very broad market based. So for us at this status where we want more stability, like real estate is one of our biggest portfolio. It's about 80%, 75 to 80% of our portfolio actually. So there isn't really much for us. So that is for us. But if I can say on a broad level for somebody who's interested in, I want to invest for high growth. I want to invest to increase my portfolio faster, right? So in today's market, it really depends on which sort of asset class that you're more drawn to, right? If you're a big real estate fan like me, then naturally you need more capital. Of course, you don't need to just look at Singapore. Like for us, we have more than 10 properties in 3 countries, right? We have Malaysia, Singapore, and one more country, which we...
What's the third country?
We actually reserve that
I know.
for
I heard that. I heard that.
community.
I heard that. So I'm not able to ask.
Yeah.
You're not gonna divulge the third
No
country.
not fair
Region. Is there a region
well, it's in...
in the region?
Okay lah. I mean, somewhere in the world lah.
Okay, we actually, the reason why we are, saying it like that is because an instrument is an instrument. Asset is an asset, right? At the end of the day, right, I'm jumping the gun here a bit. This asset or this financial instrument is just to help you to get to your ultimate goal.
Yeah, I
Right?
get it.
What's the purpose of, for example, you want to be retired? So that is actually much more important, right? Then today I have this forex trading strategy that can give me 10% return a month, right? Because that can change.
The disturbing YouTube guru.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's how it is. So in today's market condition, I think the first thing you got to understand is broad-based. You need to understand, like, for example, it's a very strange market condition now, right? Inflation has been very high since 2022, 2023, and then it somewhat came down because interest rates has gone up, right? The Federal Reserve kept increasing the interest rate to try and bring down the inflation rate, right? Now, but the stock market is still going. S&P just hit the all-time high just a month ago. It's very interesting, right? Why is the stock market going so high? And then you hear of the companies doing layoffs, retrenching, doing cost cutting. You know why? I mean, this is my personal opinion. There's a big disparity in 2020 when the pandemic happened, where in that 3-4 months where the stock market went down and then suddenly recovered, there was this sudden fear because pandemic is a very unknown environment for everybody, including all the people on Wall Street, right? They don't know what's going to happen. Then everybody panicked because we had no vaccine then. So like, hey, is this like the end of the world potentially? So there weren't any solution. So the stock market was rattled. Sorry. So just like any human beings, given a period of time, like I think everything's okay. Then the stock market started recovering. Then all the tech stocks, the high growth tech stocks, all your work from home stocks, all your those tech stock that like Peloton and all that, you do
Zoom.
exercising at home, Zoom,
Peloton.
all started run like crazy,
Yeah.
right? So that came with a price. All these stock became very overvalued in 2020 and 2021, and that kind of screw up the whole valuation system, right? And then 2022, 2023, there comes a period of normalization, right? And people like started working the borders open, everybody came back to reality, no more free
revenge
handouts.
traveling.
Yeah, no more free handouts from the government, right? Then 2023 was a bad year for the stock market. It kind of normalized, right? If you think about it. But because of how things accelerated in 2020, 2021, 2022 suddenly it came down so fast. So there's a period of normalization. So now we're in 2024. Companies have gotten wiser as well. Why? Because they realize that, hey, we cannot just be borrowing money and then try expand. Because guess what? The interest rate is so high, right? It's 5% now, based on the Fed fund rate.
Yeah.
It gets expensive to borrow. And if I can't borrow money to expand, then what do I need to do? I need to be conservative. And I don't know what's going to happen next because it's so uncertain. So the stock market don't kind of reflect the economy.
Good, yes.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
unemployment rate is like, it's like not really that low also. But why is there so many layoffs?
To me, it runs different, right? The real economy is one thing, the financial economy is different thing, right? I have a slightly different narrative on this, right? But for me, I think the financial economy is quite different from how the real world is working at this point in time, right? So it's about fund flows, less about the real economy, how is it performing, right? So yeah, and this is a difficult thing to understand. It takes a lot of work to get to this position to understand this thing, right?
Exactly. So
yeah.
before I would even talk about investing, right, I would say it would be great for everybody to really understand how the dynamics of the economy works. And then if you are interested in any particular asset class, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, right? Even like for me, I'm also a gold and silver fan, right? Precious metals. I use it to hedge. Then understand the dynamics of it. Start small and try a little. Always be involved, right? So you need to put money on table to get involved, to learn your lessons, whether it's to pay to the market or, to understand the asset class better. And then when you are familiar with a few asset class, then you can start to diversify. Otherwise, you shouldn't be diversifying if you're not even, pretty okay or pretty good with one instrument. That's my point. And then, of course, there's always an issue of how much capital that you want to put in, right? Always start small.
Okay, fair. Maybe if you don't mind sharing, like at this point in time, how big is your overall portfolio?
Okay, so when we retired in 2020, our portfolio was slightly over 2 million Sing dollars, of which, as I mentioned earlier, about 75% is our real estate, or 20% is our paper assets, which actually changes. Not like every day or every other week.
Of course,
Sometimes the portfolio changes after every quarter, right? We are just like like Berkshire Hathaway, right? Every quarter have a quarter
report between yourselves. Hey, so not bad, this quarter.
And if you understand the financial markets, there's a lot of changes going on. If you go and look at Berkshire Hathaway's their quarterly report, you know that there's a lot of buying and selling going over there. So we are no different because the world changes so fast. It's great to be very plugged in and adjust accordingly, right? So not long ago, there isn't such a thing called Magnificent Seven, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a FANG stock, right? So you notice how terms change quickly, right? To suit the
Magnificent
flow
Seven. You came from
market.
that era. Hey, very long never hear this word already. Yeah, Magnificent
Not that long
Seven.
ago, just 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
And I think Netflix will want to end, So what's happening in Netflix? So you see, things change so fast. So it's very important to be in tune in the market, right? So for our portfolio, it changes. I mentioned 75% on real estate, 20% on paper assets. So that changes, although it's predominantly more stable stocks and ETFs. So that's more broad-based. And then we have a 5% in precious metals and in cryptocurrency, but that is more on a hedge. To kind of hedge means basically you have an instrument that is somewhat uncorrelated to your other investments.
I love how you use somewhat.
I mean, somewhat. It's not,
as they become increasingly financialized, the correlation increase. But that's a different discussion. Yeah.
So basically, in investment terms, that is actually to reduce your risk, right?
Yeah.
There's this term called risk of ruin, all right? So basically, to reduce your risk of ruin, you try to have as many uncorrelated investment instruments But of course, if the stock market tanks, sometimes the real estate also, it don't exactly tank. It might come down a bit, right? So there is some correlations, somewhat
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that's why I say somewhat. That's the reason why.
It's cool. It's cool. I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing.
Welcome.
Hey, welcome to the Financial Coconut Podcast Network. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut. And if you're loving what we're creating here, like, share, subscribe, share with your loved ones, comment in the comment section below. And yeah, we'll see you for great content on Chills with TFC. So, okay, I get it, right? There are different tools for different people. I mean, I do come from the view that at the end, it's about finding a tool that works for you, lah. Right? And then if you find a tool that works for you and you have sufficient interest in it, then you just keep repeating it, right? That's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
That's why you see all the uncle auntie always at the new launch, right? It's like, yeah, you always see one. It's like, oh my God, what you're doing here? Capital recycling. They don't need a third home or fourth home, right? They're just here to invest and make their money. So ultimately, find the tool that works for you, right? But the whole idea of retiring early is not something that people think of naturally, right? Like suddenly you just want to retire, right? So maybe we can talk a little bit about like, why do y'all want to retire? What's the thought process around it? And also like why Penang, right? Like why here, right? So maybe just share with our audience.
Sure.
Yeah, which are mostly hard-working Singaporeans. Yeah.
People like us.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, first of all, I knew from a very early age, ever since the bikini business, that I didn't want to work for anyone else, right? But of course, that bikini business, we closed down because, I wasn't very comfortable with it, right? It wasn't my passion. And so in Singapore, you may not know this, but I co-own part of the training company that I did the trainings in as well. And then, of course, we had the hawker business as well. So all these attempts, right, were always to move us out of the rat race. So creating businesses is fun, it's easy, and that was what we always aim to do, because at the end of the day, the end goal was to be financially free. Why early retirement was because, number one, 2020 we worked extremely hard, because I had another online business that did extremely well as well, and we were working pretty much non-stop. So in 2020, when we said, oh, look, our assets are growing, everything is going well, let's take a break. And opt for this early retirement. Never never know, ma. Let's see what life can really bring to us, right? And of course, I my secret goal is to be a tai, okay?
Not so secret anymore.
Not so secret.
Yeah, on set, someone got pressure.
A lot of my friends know what I want to be tai, what,
Yeah, the bikini tai.
So, hey, I told you I wasn't a model.
Okay.
So what happened was, at end 2020, when I wrapped up my online business, I sold my share to the other shareholders, and then we told my mom, hey mom, we're coming back to Penang, but now got COVID, so don't know when, right? So we sold our house, we sold our stuff, we moved in with John's parents. And that was when we really took the whole of 2021 to kind of figure out what is next for us. So we took a lot of long walks, we worked on our health, because 2020 I cooked a lot, I became very fat. So we worked on our health, we took long walks, we started discussing what can we do now in our new phase. And the answer came to us is, we have a lot of knowledge that we want to pass on, right? And if we were to just have coffee sessions with our friends, right, the impact is not so great. So that's why we started our YouTube channel. And why Penang? Well, I'm from Penang. John has never lived anywhere outside of Singapore.
Oh my God, so Singaporean. Eh?
So Singaporean,
That's right.
So study also in Singapore. Whereas Malaysia, at least you study in Australia or UK,
No, and at least Malaysians go to other states, right? So it's true, right? A lot of Malaysians will experience different states. And
so from Ipoh, maybe you work in Penang and that kind of thing.
But Singaporean really on the island forever.
Yeah.
Really,
so
really.
I mean, for me, I love Singapore lah. So anyway, John said, hey, let's not go too far from home. So where can we go? Then obviously the real obvious choice is Penang, because I've not seen my family, during the lockdown, so I miss them very much. And, we already have a place to stay, my house in Penang. So that was the most logical choice. And, Penang has the sun, the sea, the food. What's not to love, right? So that was the journey.
Yeah. So the thing about early retirement, right, is most people don't understand what it can look like. And that's one of the key reasons why we created our channel, to give people a reference, an idea of what it can look like. Because the traditional way of retirement, right, like if you look at our parents and grandparents, it looks very different from probably what most of us, maybe in our 40s, 50s even, and of course definitely the 20s and 30s want, right? Their current retirement is basically, you can't really travel. you got to keep to a very fixed budget because you are either living off pension or you're living off, some people might be living off CPF payout, for example, a very fixed amount of money, and you're usually doing nothing. There's not much productivity there. And personally, I always believe that every human being needs to continue the process of evolution. We need to keep growing. Okay,
The
evolution
man
is a big
search
word
for
lah.
meaning. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. Actually, these
true.
are the
Yeah, yeah.
questions that we will then ask a lot when we are, especially now in our early retirement, because many people in a rat race, many people who are working strive to get to a point where you don't have to work anymore. But the real questions come in when you have the time and space to sit down and really have a think about what you really want to do. And this applies to even successful businessmen. Many of them have never experienced the retired life before. So the only thing that they really want to do, maybe they are very clear about it, is to keep going at their business, right? So the meaning and purpose of what we want to do is the key anchor point to how we continue working our way towards early retirement.
Yeah.
And one of the
And to be fair, I think that's a big reason why a lot of people are quitting their jobs after the pandemic. 2 years stuck at home, like although yes, you continue to work from home at a reduced capacity, you have a lot of time to think about all these things. Right? Then I have a lot of friends that end up like, oh my god, why am I doing this? And they all started
Yeah.
quitting their jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the question that a lot of people don't know how to ask themselves is, what is the purpose in my life? What am I put here on earth for? That question can be actually very scary for a lot of people, because what if the answer is, I'm useless, I have no purpose in life, right? But I'm here to tell you that based on, I coach thousands of people over the many years in my training company, and there always is a purpose for everybody. You just need to have the courage to find it and ask yourself that hard question. And when we ask ourselves that hard question, what are we here on earth for? What's the purpose, right? Is to really connect and educate people that life is so much more than just going to work and coming home and then repeat the cycle. Life is to live, but the question is, are you living life, right? And that's the reason why when we see our grandparents and parents, it's very sad, because the traditional way of retirement now is 2024. We cannot move into that. We cannot adopt that same way anymore, because back days, our grandparents and our parents, right? There's no cafe food, right? Restaurant food is a treat. Overseas travel is once in a blue moon.
there's no budget travel then.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as, let's go for a weekend staycation. There's no such thing, right? But whereas us people in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and now 50s as well, we're so used to these kind of things, right? So I'm not even talking about the country clubs, the credit card, the 5 Cs. That is long gone already. Now it's really about experiencing life, right? And if you choose the path of traditional retirement, it actually means that your quality of life becomes less as you age. Because now you have to worry about money, because money is a scarce resource. You have to worry about your health. You want to eat good, no money. You want to eat supplements, no money. You want to go to private hospital, no money. Right? And we see that in our everyday life in Singapore and in Penang, especially when we travel a lot in Malaysia during our road trips. We actually see that, like when you go around the neighborhoods, right, you can see houses which are in disarray, in disrepair, because people got no money to paint a nice fresh coat of paint, to do repairs, because they're counting their pennies, you see. And then you have to ask yourself this, hey, I'm now 35, 40 years old. When I'm 65, do I really want to live that kind of life? Can I live that kind of life? Wouldn't it be depressing? Because we grew up in the information age, right? When Netflix, you want instant gratification. Imagine you have to save for 1 year to paint your house. So the question to ask our audience is, can or not? Can you do that? Can you live a life where you're 70 years old, you only have a few, $1,000 or $2,000 coming in, and then you need to save and scrimp, and you can't go for your restaurant food anymore? Whereas in the past, you used to do that almost on a weekend basis. That is the thing that I want to drum into our viewers here, because if they're not careful and they keep spending more and more money, they will end up that way without much retirement savings and then relying on CPF payout.
The key thing is not to be in a end state thinking.
Yeah.
Many people think that retirement is an end state. It is not, right? Even that's why FIRE, for that matter, is great, right? Please get to that level. But it's still an end state. No, there's no such thing as end state in life. Things are moving so dynamically. It's changing so fast. Just look at the pandemic, right? And who's to say not more such things will come? Look at the wars that's going on around the world right now. So if I'm a 70-year-old right now, I can imagine that, hey, the DBS and OCBC, they stopped allowing me to use the bank book to put inside the ATM machine anymore, which I've been doing for decades, right? Now I need to go online. I don't know how to go online. Who's going to help me with that? My kids, right? But the thing is, what about the online scammers? What about the hackers? How do you defend against something like that? When you are 70 years old, you're already struggling. Imagine you're 80 years old. So the process of growth and thinking and staying plugged into the world is even more important now, especially if you are in your retirement years. You don't just sit back and, do nothing, because then you are actually endangering yourself. And in terms of risk management, you are your highest risk if you stop the process of learning.
You're not relevant anymore. Right?
Exactly.
Yes, and
Relevancy.
I think the process of life is you need to grow or you decay, right? So let me give you an example of a tree, right? A tree actually grows all the time. We just can't see because it grows very slowly. But the moment it stops growing, right, it has already started the decaying process. We are no different. The moment we are not, learning new things, we're not growing in terms of our knowledge and, life itself, right, getting more new life experience, we're actually decaying. And that's when diseases start coming in, we have depression. So our emotional, mental, and physical health all declines. So that's why we are, by even having a YouTube channel, we are learning a lot.
I know,
right?
I know.
And that keeps us active and plugged into the markets and into the world as well.
Interesting. Okay, fair. I like where you were going with this, like retirement as an end state, and it's really just like a different phase of life that you're kind of working through, right?
Yeah.
So on the story of you guys retiring, a few years ago with 2 million in asset, and then choosing Penang because wife's family is here.
Yep.
How has it then been? Maybe from a Singaporean viewpoint, right? Coming to Penang, how has life been? Give our listeners some comparison, something to understand.
Sure.
Right?
Wow,
Yeah.
I would
Everybody
say,
thinks Singapore is the best, right? Very convenient, right? So yeah.
actually, every country, every city, every town, right, that you visit has its own flavor, has its own pros. So I see it differently. When I go to a different country, especially like 2023, we traveled half of the entire year to
So many
countries, so many cities, right? I actually like to look at the beauty of what that place has to offer. And I focus myself on that rather than what is not good. So if you go to the comparisons of saying, let's say, between Singapore and Malaysia, right? Not even just Penang, right? Like, let's just say the transportation system. I mean, there's no fight, right? Between the public transportation system. But the thing is, can you then afford a car in Singapore compared to in Malaysia, where it's actually a basic need? It's actually not a want. Whereas in Singapore, it becomes like a want, right? For most people. So with that perspective, and coming to Penang and staying here for the long term with new eyes, rather than maybe as a tourist, where I just come eat, enjoy whatever I can and then go home, right? The perspective is very different.
Yeah.
So what I really love about Penang and even Malaysia for that matter is, first of all, there's a lot of space, right? And I'm talking about Malaysia as a whole. Penang Island is a bit smaller.
Penang Island is horrible. The jam is horrible.
Yes, the jam,
the rush
yes.
hour jam is crazy, and there's so many single lane and like one way traffic. It's
Yes.
nuts.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's small. So
yeah.
But
But
it
it's not built for this density.
Correct.
Yes, but that's a different discussion.
it does move though, so
Yeah.
it's not so bad.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more
You're comparing to
space.
KL, huh? KL people go whack you.
KL.
KL is quite bad, but anyway.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we
yeah,
do go down to KL a lot as well. So of course,
yeah.
you see, even between the two states, right, Penang and KL is really so different.
Yeah.
Right. So let me just talk about Penang, right?
Yes.
So in terms of Penang, I like the fact that in terms of the conservation, right, you get to see a lot more of the older shop houses in its original state. Whereas in Singapore, is the heritage houses and all that, they are being repainted, it's still a bit of a facade, if I can say that, right? Even though there's great effort to try and conserve. So in Singapore, we tend to modernize too fast. So sometimes in the process of modernization, we do lose a lot of the old traditional stuff, the real authenticity of, let's say, the shop houses. Because we used to live in Juchen before we moved over to my parents'
Joo Chiat,
place.
nice
So
place,
if you look at the shop houses, they are all very nice to look at, very authentic, but you know that they're not the original state.
I think maybe a little bit of character is missing.
The character of Malaysia that you get to discover when like for me, I had the time to really go on the road, slow things down, to really open up my eyes and see and observe and experience. Right? Living the experience. I think that's the key thing compared to maybe if I were in Singapore and I were to travel, or rather I were to be based and living in Singapore, and I were to travel to, let's say, another country, right? Whether it's Europe, Taiwan, Japan, nowadays Singaporeans love to go to Japan, right? Is it just a go? I go and fulfill my itinerary. I just want to go that place, take some Instagrammable pictures or eat that food, but are you really living the experience? I guess that's the key difference with having the time and space to really enjoy at this stage of our lives.
So from that perspective, right? Like how is it like for you, living in Penang? Like, can you just describe in like more everyday terms, like relative to Singapore life? How is it like?
So every day, we always wake up with an awesome breakfast. There are so many food choices.
It's just one
in
line
Penang.
sweep all the Singapore breakfast. Cannot, very bad.
So the question we ask ourselves for breakfast is still the same. It is, hey, what to eat today? But in the Penang context, it is, hey, there's so many choices, which one to choose? Whereas, unfortunately, in Singapore, it is what to eat today. The choices are so little because, we tend to go for the best. So we need to choose which one only. Right? So same question, different context.
Yeah. Especially Juche area. Used to have a lot more.
A lot more.
No more already.
No more.
Is a lot of
One
them,
by one,
yeah,
all gone. Yeah.
All gone because commercialization, right? But yeah.
So my day-to-day experience is, of course, food. That's undisputed. And surprisingly, it's not just about the hawker food. The hawker food for me is the best in the world, Penang. And we have really traveled. We traveled to Thailand, we traveled to other parts of Malaysia, of course, Singapore, in Indonesia. Penang is really the best. And of course, from a cost perspective, Penang is really affordable compared to other cities like KL even. I don't even compare to Singapore, right? You do know Penang is at least, I would say, even up to 30% cheaper
30
than,
to 40, yeah.
Yeah, even 40% depending on the place for their food. And I'm not just talking about hawker food, even cafe food. And I dare say some of the cafes in Penang, some of them, is almost as good as the ones that are in Singapore, right? To be fair, right? Based on price and all that, and standard and the availability, some of the Penang cafes here are really good. And the price is 30% cheaper than KL. See, that is something about Penang that maybe people do not know. And in terms of all the states, right? If you notice, and that's the first thing that blew my mind when
Actually,
I came
can
to
you give
Penang.
me a cost breakdown? Like, how much are you spending every month here in Penang?
Sorry, again?
Yeah, can you give me a cost breakdown? How much are you all spending every month here in Penang?
In Penang.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's just Penang, right?
Yeah. We
then,
put the travel aside. Okay,
Okay.
we just look at like your day-to-day life in Penang. 1 month, how much do you spend?
okay, I built it from ground up. Because right now, to be honest, I don't have the actual numbers. Because my number is a budget that includes things that are in Singapore also. So I need to subtract that out. Let me build it from ground up.
Yes.
So like for example, Penang, right? A typical breakfast will cost you not more than, including drinks, 8 to 9 ringgit. It's different KL, right?
KL don't have double digit, no talk already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
And
That's why I
sometimes
tell you.
we add ingredients as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
our number actually is slightly higher. So for example, wanton mee, we add either more wanton or more char siu, right? And that becomes, let's say, 750. Then plus a drink too. So it becomes 950,
Okay,
right?
substand.
But the starting price, if you don't add ingredients, is 5 to 6.
Wow, okay.
And cafe food, for let's say we both have a pasta dish and a coffee each, for example, will be, let's say like here, right? We are talking about maybe, let me just do the math, 70 ringgit, 70, 80 ringgit.
For two.
Yeah, for
Hardly
two.
hit 80, about
Yeah,
70.
we don't cross 100 because I know in KL you will cross 100.
Yeah.
Right?
about there.
You're
Yes,
staying there,
yes,
you know,
yes,
right?
yes.
Of course, don't even talk about Singapore.
Yeah.
So that is the base price that we have. If you're talking about cooking at home, which we do some cooking at home as well, and her mom cooks as well. So if you're talking about wet market price, for longest time, chicken prices used to be controlled. So it used to be a lot lower.
Subsidized.
Right
mah,
now,
yeah.
it's they let go of the subsidy, so it's a bit higher. So there's in terms of context, based on the longest time, it has been a lot lower, right? So like chicken prices, vegetables, because a lot of them are homegrown. This is the
Actually,
wet
that's
market.
the fun part about the wet market here because the supply chain is kind of separated, right? So you got all sorts of weird things that the merchants grow and then they bring down, or their neighbors grow and then they bring down to the
Yes,
market
you're
to
absolutely
sell.
right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, the auntie will say, hey, you want sweet potato? Just now, I just plucked only from my garden. Right?
Yeah, it's very cute, very cute. It's very
Yeah,
different.
and these are the lovely things that you can see in Malaysia, right? Definitely not in
uh.
Singapore. Everything is very managed. You know, there's a whole AVA process of getting. Are they still called AVA process of making sure the checks on the food and all that. Understandably, lah, right?
Yeah.
So our food cost is very managed because we are not the sort that even like to eat restaurant much. I mean, to be honest, we don't really eat much restaurant food in Penang or Malaysia for the matter. If we do, it will either be overseas or in Singapore, right? So the international cuisine in Penang not so good compared
Yeah.
to Singapore.
Of course.
in
of
my
course.
opinion, right?
Yeah,
So that's why we don't.
I second that opinion. Really is not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. The best chefs want to make money, all go Singapore make already.
Correct.
So you want to eat all your fancy weird things in Singapore.
Correct. So we
yes.
eat all of that in Singapore, and then we
Yes.
leave the local one here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now let's talk about transport, right?
Yeah.
If you're talking about A to A comparison, car to car, there's no fight.
Mm.
Malaysia is really affordable in that aspect. Of course, you compare to Singapore, you just take MRT and bus, then that also cannot fight lah, because you're talking about public transport versus a private transport. So let's just focus on Malaysia, right? So in Malaysia, you definitely need a car. And I love the car choices here. So for example, right, the Malaysian-made cars. Can
Proton
you
and
guess?
Perodua lah,
Yeah,
essentially.
so either by Perodua, either by Nazar, or by Proton, you're looking at the really bare bone entry level, let's say a Axia or Iris, that
Beza?
is 1.3 or even a Beza, right? 1.3, even 1 liter car, right? You're talking about 30,000,
30 about
40,000
there. Yeah.
ringgit, no? That you can, by the way, own more than 10 years. In fact, 20, 30 years also no
Indefinitely.
problem. Yeah.
Okay.
So
fair.
the cost is very affordable for transport here. And this is the real kicker, okay? Petrol prices. So petrol in Malaysia is subsidized, heavily subsidized. Such that Malaysia, I believe, is actually one of the lowest five in the world, cheapest to for petrol. Okay, did I say that correctly? So it's one of the bottom lowest.
Yep.
Five
5 countries
in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So why? Let's say a RON 95 here costs you $2.05 per liter.
That's why Najib so unhappy when Singaporeans go and pump that shit, because it was is subsidized by the government, right? So yeah.
And also that's because there's Petronas, there's oil. It's an oil producing
of course.
country, so you need to bear that in mind. But
So
speaking of oil, right?
So we
Yeah.
pump about three times a month. Each pump is about 58 to 65 ringgit. Right, so that's how low. And we paid our car in cash. So so there's no loan that we carry.
Yep.
And then maintenance is every 6 months, another 300-400 ringgit. So that's pretty much it.
Maintenance is really affordable as
Yeah.
well if you compare to Singapore.
And they even provide you free car wash in that maintenance, so you don't have to wash that car for the week, right? And our car wash, we actually joined Cars International, so each time we wash a simple wash is 16 ringgit. We do with the wax and all that, right? It's about 64 ringgit. So it's and then you always have the top up 300 ringgit. They give you 30 ringgit credit. So life in terms of car is really good.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair. But to be fair, Flap prices is very hard to compete, right? Malaysia is Malaysia, right? It produces a lot of its own things.
Yep.
It can charge very
Yep.
affordable. Does not have the tax structure that Singapore
Yep,
has, right?
for
So,
sure.
so from a price perspective, I think there's no competition. It's,
Yeah. For
sure.
it's very hard to compete. But you've lived here, right? So the only difference that people in Singapore now have, right, is they can look at the website and the prices are different now. Okay, they get it. But for someone that have lived here, right, what is the kind of cultural nuance, like from your personal experience, having spent time here, right? What was so nice about being in Malaysia or being in Penang? Price aside, price is easy to compare, right? Yeah.
So one of the biggest reasons why we are here is because of family. Right? And Fran shared she moved to Singapore in 2010. So for a good last
13 years.
13, 14 years, she has not been actively back here in Penang to see family. Right? Whereas for me, no problem. Singapore is small. It's easy to see my parents every week. So one of the key reasons why we are back in Penang is also to see family. Right? And she has a lot of family in other states as well. So I wouldn't just say Penang because we are always on the road. We're always traveling. So Penang and Malaysia, for that matter, what really captivates me is actually the different people that we get to meet, not just family, but also friends in the different states. So it's also down to space again. So I really love that about Malaysia because there's so much space to enjoy. And even being on the road trips, right? I can tell you, honestly, Malaysia has world-class highways. World-class. I'm talking about, let's say, the North-South Highway, right? If you travel along the highway, first of all, the roads are nicely paved, right? And
That's
they
the
have
only road that's nicely paved.
No, Penang
Penang is not
roads.
bad
Yeah,
also.
Penang roads
The
are
roads
okay.
that are not nicely paved, I can tell you, are Ipoh
Ipoh.
roads.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pai
Yeah.
Jia Pei. I know.
And KL
yeah.
ain't that great, so
Yeah.
and Johor is pretty bad, lah.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
say
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I mean, I know a lot of Singaporeans are very familiar with Johor roads, but I can tell you in Penang, it's not like that.
Mm.
It's a lot better.
If there's a pothole, the next day fill up
Yeah.
already. It's
Okay,
pretty good.
Great. Yeah.
Penang is a gem. Okay, now I want to focus on Penang.
Jam
right?
is crazy.
Penang is a gem. Penang is like this little the island lah. Okay, I'm a bit biased, like my wife here. The island, right? There's Penang, of course. There's Butterworth side the mainland, but I'm just talking about the island. It's a gem because it's kind of like Singapore as well.
Mm.
If you think about it, it's also a port. It's surrounded by seas. It's an island, a smaller island, and the beauty is everywhere you travel in Penang. If you notice, Reggie, there's a lot of greenery everywhere as well.
Yeah.
You know, Singapore did a fantastic job in terms of the URA, the urban planning, you know, even with all the concrete that we have, all the buildings, right? We have a lot of greenery planted in. In Penang, a lot of the greenery is left untouched. So if you drive along some of the main roads, you really feel like, wow, there's a lot of shelter, a lot of shade, and a lot of green all over. So it doesn't feel like some of the other Malaysian states. You travel, you are totally like there's no anything overhanging, so you are like very exposed, right? And it's like a very, I wouldn't say barren land, but it's like a very sparsely populated you're looking at. But whereas in Penang, you turn here, you turn there, you know, you mentioned there's a lot of one-way roads, right? You suddenly, you know, get to see, you know, heritage houses, you see a lot of little surprises along the way.
Yeah.
That's what I really love about Penang.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You go all the way Batu Ferringhi, you go to the back. You know, it's a lot of like
Yeah.
very nature. It's original forest,
Yes.
original one, not the rebuilt one. So
And
Yeah.
yet, I'm still pretty much a city boy.
mm,
Right, and I think Fran is also a city girl. So I like the elements of the city as well, right? So there's the different shopping malls here that is of a great standard. And by the way, a few of them are owned by CapitaLand Singapore.
yeah.
I mean CapitaLand Malaysia lah, but it's owned by the bigger group.
So
CapitaLand.
I think
yeah.
for us is because I've been away for 13 years, right? And what I noticed is like, you know, in Singapore, everything is very fast paced,
It's
right?
true.
Everything, the schedule's all booked out, right? So if I want to have dinner with my friends in Singapore, we need to actually book each other's schedule maybe 1 or 2 months in advance. Hey guys, friends' birthdays in April, are y'all free? And that was in January, right? Whereas in Penang, it's a little bit different. In Penang, my best friend can say, hey, I'm in your neighborhood. Can I come by? Sure.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
never has my Singapore friends ever called me and say, hey, I'm in Joo Chiat, can I drop by? They don't even know where I stay actually, to be honest, right?
Now they know.
Now they
but
know.
That's not important
No,
already.
I don't live
You're
there
out
anymore.
already.
Right? So I think the beauty about Penang is that we go to each other's houses. You know, on Sundays, my auntie's house is always open. Relatives will just drop by. Hey, hi. You know, either we have a meal together or we just sit down and talk. So I think the communal experience in Penang is something that I sorely miss.
Yeah.
And because we're retired, right, we actually have time to take my aunties out for a leisurely lunch with my mum as well, of course. So
I know auntie's leisurely lunch is very leisurely one.
Very leisurely one.
Very long
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
I understand. Because like in KL, after work, my friends can gather and play board game. You know, it's a very different thing, right? In Singapore, after work is go back and get your shit done, or you know, you gotta go for networking or something, right?
Yeah.
But we also must be fair that it is Singapore that allow you to accumulate your money, right? Because
Totally
it is
agree.
so intense. Because
Yes.
the transaction numbers are so high, and we all understand how things
Yes.
flow, right? Essentially,
Yes.
it's based on how much transaction, how
Correct.
much flow there is. So eventually, that is a platform to help eventually all of us to accumulate. But after you
Absolutely.
accumulate already, right? You're a professional for 10 over years, 20 years, you accumulate already, then you need to start the question like, okay, now I don't really need to accumulate as much, right? Do I still want to be here?
Exactly.
that's
And
the
what's next
question.
for me, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so I've been working. Sometimes in the working process, you kind of lose yourself in the process. You don't know who you are. You know, are you a great father? Are you a compassionate mother? Who are you in the essence? I think that gets lost in the translation of the work, right? And I think by stepping back and kind of finding ourselves, we actually get to answer that question, which is come back to who are we in the essence, you know? Yeah. And I think that's very important as a human being. Because we're human beings, no? We're not human doings.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, fundamentally, when we get caught in the day-to-day routine, right, we lose we lose perspective of what is it that we really want to achieve in this world, on this earth. Because if I'm just coming to be born here into this world, and I get brought up by my parents, I go through my childhood, I study, then I get a job, work for 40, 50 years, and then I retire, without really doing anything significant, right? I don't think that is something that human beings are meant to be doing on this earth. So that is a broader question.
You're challenging the Singapore dream.
Well, the thing, okay, so back to Singapore, what you just said earlier, Reggie, is great, because Singapore, you need to understand the advantages of being a Singaporean right now, or somebody who's working in Singapore. The Sing dollar has been strengthening, and the pay wage, right, the salary with perspective to the cost of living. Right, just now we share you some numbers for Malaysian costs, right? Let's say it's KL, right?
But it's very hard for local Malaysians, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
We must be
that
clear.
is true.
Yes.
And we covered this on our YouTube channel as well. Their average income, right? They're talking about 5,000-6,000 ringgit versus in
and
Singapore.
It's already considered quite a good pay.
Yeah, and that is not bad really. In Singapore, 5,000-6,000, okay, not bad. So, but what's the cost of wanton mee in Singapore versus a wanton mee in don't even say KL, even Penang? Cost of wanton mee in Penang is 7-8 ringgit.
Yeah.
In Singapore, it's like 4 Sing dollars.
No, now 4 also very hard to find. About 5,
but 7-8 ringgit is the starting price.
Yes,
so I'm comparing starting price to starting price.
Yeah.
Wanton mee, if you add on, it will be about closer to 9, 8.50, 9 if you add meat. Right?
Yeah.
So the starting price, bare bone price of wanton mee, maybe 4.50, right?
Yeah.
But just look at that number, is almost half, So if you're talking about dollar to dollar, in Sing dollars, you actually get to enjoy a currency superiority over some of the other currencies, especially in Southeast Asia. That's why in our channel, we went to the different countries. We went to Indonesia, we went to Malaysia, many parts of Malaysia, went to Thailand, we've even gone to Korea and all that, Vietnam, right? To share you what's the cost of living like over there, right? So we go and find out the cost of living over there. Then if you really pack everything back to Sing dollars, you realize that, hey, actually, Singapore, that's the reason why we can travel every quarter.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
That's a privilege, right? So
Yeah.
instead of always thinking about escaping, right? Like, I work very hard at work. Okay, so I go and buy a bigger car. I go and buy a BMW. Since COE is so high, right? Since I need a car, I myself just spend the extra 50, 100,000. Right? That is the mindset,
that's
right?
the mindset,
I mean,
yes.
I'm just being very honest here, right?
No, it's the working professional mindset. I'm going to pay 150,000 on this already. Might as well I pay 180,000 for that, right?
Yeah,
so,
and that would be us because we chose not to have kids. And if we're going to stay in Singapore all our life until we retire, we're not with no end in sight, right? Then of course we will just upgrade lah. I make myself feel better. But that's the thing, see, that money that you can actually put aside to go and invest can grow, and together with Sing dollar strength, right? You can do a lot in Malaysia, in Indonesia, Thailand. You pick and choose your battles. Understand the different countries so that as a Singaporean, right, I want to make use of this advantage where I've worked 10, 15, 20 years. I work very hard, right? I got this pool of money, right? What can I do more with this money? So the interesting part is I budget everything in Sing dollars because I'm still a Singaporean.
Same. I still do that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I still do that.
But I'm spending in ringgit.
Yeah.
So technically I get a times 3.57.
And also that is because we don't earn ringgit. We only earn USD or Sing dollars.
Yeah.
So obviously we budget with that. Yeah.
So we price in Sing dollars. So that's the thing, right? And we interviewed one of a young couple. They are digital nomads and they are always on the road. In fact, we met more nomads along the way, some American nomads. So it's very interesting. And these guys, they are always thinking cross countries. Yeah. Right? And I did Forex before. So I understand the dynamics of currency, like Sing dollar to Australian dollar now, right? It's 1 to 1.14, all right?
Yeah.
Yen is so weak now, right?
I know,
so,
and you know what's the best thing? The best thing is I didn't realize the Australian dollar was so weak because it's not in my purview, right? Until the other day, I worked with another big company, right? And they had an Australian team, right? And then they told me that, actually, that your price that you're charging is more expensive than the Australian team. I was like, why? Because the currency is different. Oh, really? I didn't realize. Australian dollar 这么烂 now, right? It's things have changed over the past 10, 20 years. Sing dollar is appreciated. Yeah.
So we must use that to our advantage. And I think Singapore has done a great job in attracting a lot of, I'm trying not to use the word wealthy because I know that's a discussion point now. A lot of family officers into Singapore so that we increase our stature as a financial hub. We increase our marketing, like now Taylor Swift, right, is another discussion point, right? We have done a great job in marketing ourselves. The Singapore Incorporated, right? But the human element is unfortunately a part of the
Sacrifice.
price to pay for that.
Yes.
So be aware of that trade-off that you are having. That's why you're jaded at work, right? So you need to understand that if I'm going to work so hard now, right, I better make sure that every dollar that I earn, right, I'm going to utilize it and make sure it works super hard for me in the future when I'm retired, or if I want to go into a semi-financial independent state. Why not, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're willing to move from Singapore to Malaysia, you already know that you can essentially half your Singapore budget and
Yeah.
perhaps even living a better quality of life
Yeah.
in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Fair.
that is called making your money work very, very hard for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair. I love it because I think that's the talk of the town. Essentially, you have a whole generation of working professionals that have done the Singapore dream. They work very hard, they made their money, and then now they're asking themselves, what's next? Because right, I will never be able to upgrade into a lander in Singapore anymore, right? Because the prices just don't make sense. Things are moving up. You know, my kids need all these things now, no longer like the past. So a lot of people are questioning like, hey, what's next?
Yeah.
Right. And then I think people are opening up that purview to look at what's in the region, right? So that is very interesting. But maybe last question for you, right?
Sure.
As the fellow Singaporean, right? How do you think you are contributing back to Singapore in this sense? Because a lot of the Singapore government will be a bit concerned if a lot of people start leaving, high quality individuals or whatever they want to call it, your PMATs, right? People that are
Yep.
working very hard and getting taxed by the system, contributing back to society. They are moving out, or a lot of people have the ability to move out and the money to move out. How do you think you are contributing back to the country while you're not in the country? Because you still say our. You keep saying our Singapore, so your identity is still tied to it, right?
For sure.
So,
So
yeah.
maybe I can share a bit, a little bit of our game plan.
Yeah.
Actually, when we first did our first YouTube video, which we released in October 2022, we actually said that we will go back to Singapore. So it's our every intention to spend some time here, and then a couple of years from now, we'll be back in Singapore again.
Why?
And that's the interesting part, right? Why? Yeah. So the first, maybe I answer a broader question first before I talk about the contribution. Why do we need to stay and be retired in one particular country? Why can't we be retired in Portugal, for example? Why can't we be retired in Mexico, for example? What's stopping us from doing that? See, apart from the visa, which is a technical issue, right? So you think about it. If you have your finances handled, you have the money to travel, you have the money to be in Spain, why not? See, then it becomes a mindset thing, right? What's wrong with retiring in Singapore? What's wrong with having the options of being in any part of the world? So in order to answer that question, or rather, there's nothing wrong, right? Assuming that's the answer. In order to fulfill that, then make sure you have the cash flow to substantiate whatever living expense that you need to stay in whichever country you want. And that's the beauty about cross borders. And being very in a very borderless world nowadays, we can work remotely, we can do things remotely. We don't need to be physically, right? Now we're in Malaysia, right? We're Singaporeans, but we're in Penang, right? Having this conversation. What's stopping us from having that cash flow, that money that's coming in to retire in Singapore, which we will actually in a couple of years' time? Because another key reason, my parents are aging actually. They are in their mid-80s now. So we do want to go back and take care of them. Because we know that part of life is very important. And I'm not talking about just weekend dropping by, but really staying together and taking care of them. So that is part of a bigger reason why we are going back to Singapore. And of course, we love Singapore, right? She loves Singapore. She really loves Singapore. It was,
to be honest,
my
Reggie,
idea
it
to
was
come
his
here.
idea to come here.
Yeah.
I would be very happy in Singapore, and and I want to become a Singaporean. So the reason why I'm not yet is because
Shout out to the Zhenghu.
yeah, that's right. Hey, if you're seeing, please, I want my Singaporean passport. And he's on a spousal visa in Malaysia, so I'm sponsoring him. So if I become Singaporean, then we can't live long term in Malaysia, right? Which is why our days in Malaysia are so precious, because we can then do a lot of road trips. We're spending a lot of time with family. So every action that we do is very intentional, and we have a company in Singapore. I've got rental properties in Singapore. So we are contributing to society. Our YouTube is always contributing to society. So we identify very much to Singapore as well as Malaysia for now.
If you really understand the wealth cycle, right? Money flows in, money flows out, more money flows in, more money flows out. Then that is like, if you think about it, right? We are here on Earth for 70, 80, 90 years, right? You think about it, we are actually just safekeepers of this pool of money, right? In that sense, right? So the whole idea of retirement, right, is whatever money that I have in my custody, right, I let it be managed and handled. Now, money is out of the equation. My real decisions in life that have little to no influence from money, what is it that I really want to do that I can actually impact this world? I guess that is a very deep question that gives fulfillment and purpose.
It's
Yup.
also about the abundance mindset and the scarcity mindset, right? Say, for example, I only have $50,000 in my bank account, right? And let's say somebody, a relative, needs surgery, but I can't afford, you see, because this is all the money I have left in the world. I can't afford to contribute, right? If I give you 40,000, I only have 10,000 left. How am I going to live out my days, right? But let's say I have a passive flow of income coming in all the time with my capital still untouched. Not a problem. Then I can be more giving. I can be contributing more. I can do more. So it's about not about hoarding the money for myself, but how can I create a contribution cycle such that I give you money, more money comes in. I give you money, more money comes in. It's the law of attraction as well, right? When the money flows out, the universe somehow responds to say, okay, you're giving me money and the money is moving. Let me give you back more money. And that's just the cycle. And that's how the wealthy really operates. They actually do a lot of charity behind that we don't know. And I think that's a very important concept. And not only just contributing in money, because money sometimes is just very impersonal. We also contribute our time, right? We buy meals for the elderly in Singapore. We also we also contribute to the dog shelters in Penang as well. We contribute our time. We feed the dogs, we walk the dogs, we bathe the dogs. So I think these are things that when you are retired and you don't have a boss, you don't have a meetings, your day is not full of schedules, meetings, right? Then you're able to think outside the box, which is, now I've got all this time. What am I going to do with my time? I can now think outside of my immediate family. I can now think outside to society now. And I think that's very important because the world is in pain. You know, there's wars going on, there's famine, there's murders, right? And I think we just need to be a little bit kinder and more loving to one another.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And in a way to solve that, now the logical head come on, right? In order to solve the bigger problem, we need to actually, to me, is a problem of knowledge gap. There's a huge knowledge gap in financial literacy. And we have a glimpse of how the wealthy do it, right? I wouldn't call us wealthy, but we do have a number of wealthy business partners and friends. And we kind of look at, through our conversations, through our learnings from them, how they operate, right? There's a lot of principles that we can learn from these guys to better understand about money. Whether it's psychological, whether it's certain strategies, whether it's the principle of delayed gratification. Once there's this knowledge gap, right, where a lot of people may not understand, get caught in a debt trap, are spending money but don't understand why they are spending. Once a person is more financially literate, it really helps you make better decisions in life.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Come.
Yeah, it's lovely. I came all the way down to Penang. I think that's amazing. Right. So good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for having
Stay
us.
tuned. Check out their channel, and then let's see where this brings us. Okay.
Thank you very much, Reggie.
Awesome.